some baby sweet corn into the garden beds of the Polytunnel. I put these sweet corn seedlings, well I didn't, I put sweet corn seeds in these little pots about 2 weeks ago. So now we have 3-4 inch stems of sweet corn. So I've already prepared my bed by adding 1 new bag of compost and scattering that across the top. Dug myself some holes to put my plants in and filled every single hole with water. It's something I do with all the things I plant. Dig a hole, fill it with water and leave that water to drain away. And when the water's drained away, that's when I'm ready to plant my plant. Whatever kind of plant it is, a vegetable, a flower, a tree, a shrub, the principle's the same. So here goes the first of the sweet corn for this year. I think I've got 11 or 12 holes here. I'm going to do 2 rows along this bed. The bed is 4 foot wide and 8 foot long. So I'm going to do 2 rows of sweet corn along the middle, and then on the outer edge I shall grow something shorter. Maybe some cabbage or chard, lettuce, I don't know yet, but something shorter along the edges so I can still reach in easily to get to the sweet corn, to harvest them, and first of all to pollinate them. Because I'm growing indoors and sweet corn is a wind pollinated plant, it's going to need some help from me. Now sweet corn does not need to go very deep, unlike our tomatoes the other week. Whatever level the soil's at in our pot is the level I shall keep when I plant this sweet corn into the ground. And just like our tomatoes though, hand across the surface to hold all that compost in, fingers to support the stem, turn it upside down, give it a tap if needs be, and lift off the pot. I'm about 1 foot to 18 inches apart, lengthways along the row. Some of them might be a bit closer, side to side. I dug 1 row of holes, and then on the second row I've alternated spaces. Well, this pot's actually got 2 corns in it. I can just see a tiny little stump of the second corn. I must have had some spare seed when I was planting. I can't remember what variety of sweet corn I'm planting. It's just sweet corn. Might even be a mix of seed. Oh, noisy play. I can see the shadow of that across the top of me. That's a little bit scary. Yay! Something with a label. Now to give these some water and find somewhere to plant the remaining 12 sweet corn plants. I'll have to have a second bed, maybe on the other side of the tunnel. Hello and welcome again. It's a couple of days since I planted out the sweet corn. Well, not out, they're indoors in the polytunnel, but planted into the ground. So these were the ones you saw me planting. And if I try and slowly move us round, so don't make you too dizzy. This is the blackberry, Thornless Blackberry that moved itself in from outdoors, and it has got small fruits on it. We'll take a closer look at that in a second. And right behind me now is the fennel. It's got to be at least 4 foot tall. And swinging round the end doors. And on this opposite side of the tunnel, I found a second bed, and I've planted another 2 rows of sweet corn into here. Now, when I came up to the garden this morning, I was sadly greeted with a disaster outdoors. Well, I was hoping to show you my wonderful array of young sunflower plants under this netting, but I have been running into problems. Now, this long net here is a proper garden netting, and the domey tent bit at the end is actually mosquito netting designed for indoors over a bed on a hot country. I have used this mosquito netting before, and it's not UV protected, so I know it breaks down over time. It'll maybe do 2 years in the garden. So this year it wasn't strong enough, and the bunny rabbits, I'm assuming it was rabbits, dug their way in and nibbled the tops off of all my sunflowers. So I replanted the area. Thankfully I had more young plants left, and I've put a second mosquito net on top, so we're now 2 layers thick, and I've put some netting at the back where they first broke in. So I also have this thicker, stronger plastic garden netting over the space they first made a break in. And then when I came up to the garden this morning, to my horror, the big long net had blown over and was sitting at the back in the grass. All my new sunflowers and squashes exposed. I've been quite lucky that the rabbits have only eaten half of the sunflowers, so I still have a few left. But I have to admit, my heart sank. Let's see what's still there. Again, they haven't touched the young squash plants along the front of this bed, which I think is a bit unusual and definitely very fortunate for me. I have butternut squash and curry squash have just recently, in the past few days, been planted outdoors. Sunflowers at this end are fine, but back at the other end, it's obviously the side they first came in when it blew off. They've munched the tops. I've got a few little stalks and that's it. But back into the polytunnel where things are all doing splendidly. So these are peas and lettuces that I put in the ground 3 weeks ago maybe. The lettuces have gone crazy. They're really loving it. The peas have started flowering, and I even have the beginnings of the first pea pods. Very exciting. Oh, let's have a lettuce leaf while I'm here. There's plenty to spare. Yum. So this is the bed I planted the rest of the sweet corn in. I've got a tomato at the end here. Do we know which sort? Oh yes we do. A money maker tomato. Oh, and I've just noticed it's got the beginnings of little flower buds already. And I think this is a melon. I've put labels with it that say melon emir, but I'm not confident I've got the right label with the right plant. It might turn out to be a squash. Here's a closer look at the Thornless Blackberry that sneaked its way in here last year. And it has got lots of little fruits developing on its flower buds. Now, how much of that is due to me shaking it every couple of days, and how much is some sort of insect activity, bugs and beetles, I don't know. But it looks like we're going to get a decent harvest. It's certainly big enough. There's lots of room for lots of fruit. Couldn't possibly do a walk through the polytunnel without stopping to admire this beautiful petunia at every opportunity. This particular plant overwintered in here, outdoors in the garden, I'd expect to treat it as an annual. Plant the seeds, grow the plant, enjoy the flowers, and the frost will kill it off. But in here, it's managed to survive the winter, to spring into life early in the year and give me this beautiful display of flowers now, which I'm hoping will continue throughout the summer. Another flower happy at the end of one of the vegetable beds, and I have no idea what this one's called. Flower names are not one I'm good with. I do enjoy looking at the beautiful blooms though. Perhaps if you recognise it from your own garden flowers, you could let me know what it's called. I'll give it a label. I think it deserves one. It's certainly giving me a beautiful display. And lots of buds coming on. So it's going to keep on giving those lovely orange-red flowers for months to come.
Here's a close-up look at that lovely orangey-yellow flower.
And here in the pond, the water lilies are flowering as well. I think there's another one over there. Can we find it? Oh, there it is. Get them both in shot. My main flower focus this year has been lots of new dahlia tubers. I'm hoping next week I'll get a chance to plant them outdoors in their flowering positions. It's been warm enough now that I have the polytunnel doors open and netted day and night, so they'll be acclimatising nicely to those cooler night temperatures. That way they hopefully won't get too much of a shock when I pop them out in the garden. They're looking really good. I'm very pleased. I've just noticed that this Arabian Night, a dark red dahlia, has actually got a flower bud on it already. It has been in a pot inside my polytunnel since it was first planted, and I suspect it was one of the first ones to shoot up from its tuber. But I am surprised to see a flower bud already. Another exciting find today is this very first fat looking strawberry. So hopefully next week, when I finish planting up the dahlias, I can come and eat this strawberry to reward myself for all the hard work. Now this little group of plants is particularly interesting. They're actually passion fruit plants, grown from the seeds of a passion fruit bought in the supermarket. So I bought a passion fruit in the supermarket, washed the jelly goop off of some of its seeds and planted them in a little pot. In late spring last year, probably about now, I planted them into the polytunnel garden beds. I wasn't sure if they would actually survive the winter, even here inside the polytunnel. And I'm delighted to see they have. I did leave last year's dead tomato plants and pea stalks standing here a lot later in the spring than I normally would have done, as extra protection around these plants when I spotted they were still alive, as I was clearing out the stalks of last year's dead plants. So now I've cleared away all those stalks, and I have been watering these since our last risk of frost disappeared. And I see they're putting on lots of lovely lush new green growth. Now whether they will ever fruit here in the UK, I do not know. And although they are in a polytunnel, there's no extra heat in here. It does still get cold in the middle of the night, but really I'd just like to see them flower. Passion fruits come in lots of different varieties with lots of different colour patterns in their flowers. So I'm very interested to see what sort of flowers these will give. I noticed one of them, oh there, just starting to put out little tendrils as well. Now this is not just 3 plants from 3 seeds. Each little bushy cluster is about 5 or 6 seeds and has 5 or 6 little plants in it. So I'm excited to see how this progresses as the summer goes on. Just delighted to see it survive the winter. Another seed I planted last year at the same time as these were apple pips and pomegranate seeds. So here is my tray of apple pips, now little apple trees, and next to them my tray of pomegranate seeds, now pomegranate trees. Now these have been outdoors throughout the winter because they are cold hardy. Now in a warmer climate, the pomegranate trees will actually hold their leaves and be an evergreen. But in the UK it gets too cold and they become deciduous and lose their leaves every winter. But hopefully should come back the following spring, which is thankfully what these did. Now I had a few of the pomegranates that didn't make it through the winter. I've got 5 pots in here that are just long, thin, spindly, dead twigs. I've left them this late in the hope that something might appear at the lower levels, but no sign of anything as yet. So I think I can pretty much write those 5 off and tip them into the compost. Some of them have grown very tall and others are tiny little stumps. Now the pomegranates and the apples will not grow true to type, as in the fruit that this tree eventually bears will not be identical to the pomegranate it was taken from, but it will still be a pomegranate that should be perfectly edible. It might be smaller, it might have a slightly different shade of seeds, varying through deep red to pale pink. I'm excited to see how it develops over the next few years. So this is ready to be planted out into the garden. It's going to need some protection from those rabbits though, some chicken netting I think. Now the apple trees, like the pomegranate, will not grow apples exactly the same as the apple the pip came from, but they will still have beautiful apple blossom and produce small fruits. Not necessarily small fruits. They might produce a very nice eating apple, but they may produce little tiny crab-apple-y sized apples. Only time will tell, but it's still a tree and it'll still have pretty flowers. And now I have young trees that only cost me some time, a bag of apples and a little bit of compost. So I think that's me for today. Just a quick look at what's happening in the garden this week. Now I need to go and dig some holes and get these trees planted. Just before I go today, I've brought you in to take a close-up look at this tomato. Now most tomato varieties are going to be the same and can be treated in exactly the same way. The tomato plant wants to grow with lots of side shoots, taking up lots of sprawling space all over the greenhouse. But as a gardener, I'd like my tomato plant to grow one tall central stem and concentrate its effort in growing lots of lovely fruit rather than lots of side shoots and leaves. In order to train it to do this, we need to pinch out those leafy side shoots, being very careful to leave behind any possible flower buds that will eventually become our delicious tomato fruits. So here's our main tomato plant stem, and growing out from that stem are these big leafy branches which we will keep, but right in where the leaf joins the stem there's another little green growth. Now this is also leafy, so I'm going to snap it off. And as I work up the stem where this next leaf comes out, there's another leafy growth. So I'm going to snap off this leafy growth in the joint. But carrying further up the stem, we come across a bunch of tomato flower buds. We definitely want to be keeping them. They're our future tomatoes. Now I'm going back down this tomato stem. Another leaf, another leafy branch coming off the main stem. But where it joins the stem, more leaves. Just snap them off, take them away. And there's another one I can see. Leafy bit where the main leaf joins the stem. So I want to leave this plant with one main stem coming up out of the ground. One single leaf set at a time coming off that main stem. No bushy bits. I see another one hiding round the back here. A bushy bit. Off it comes. Pinch it out with your fingernails. But when we come across these flowers, we definitely want to be leaving them. Now this top thicket of leaves, I'm going to leave for now until things develop a bit further and I can see clearly which bits are leaves and which bits might become flowers.
If you've enjoyed today's video, click that like button and let me know. Now that really is it for subscribe today. And YouTube Bye for now, sure you and see my next video. Bye for now and thanks for watching. And remember, whatever you're doing, have fun doing it.